Welcome to Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockerell. Lessons in leadership, management, and customer service. You can create magic too. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and I am at my home in Washington State. Lee's at that office in Orlando that has become very recognizable with his books and Hurricane Mickey in the background. How are you doing, Lee?
Hey, good, Jay. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Before we get going on this topic, which is a listener question, I want to tell you about our friends at Magical Vacation Planner. If you are looking ahead to a trip to Orlando, just to pick a city, and you heard as an example that Epic Universe is coming at the theme park down the road, well, call our friends at Magical Vacation Planner because they're looking forward to being there too. You can reach them at 407-442-2694. And I have a listener question. So I'll tell you, if you have a question for Lee, you can send it to me, Jody at jodymayberry.com, or send it to Lee at leecockerell.com. Okay, Lee, this is an interesting question because it comes in line with something you and I have talked about recently, but this wasn't solicited by me. It's funny it came in, but it talks a little bit about your background. So I'll get to that part and then see what you have to say. So this person said lots of Disney employees I've talked to describe Lee as a legendary leader. But if you ask enough follow up questions, some will also say that if you were a manager under Lee, life could be difficult because of the very high standards that Lee set. I would say that's accurate, right? You had very high standards.
Is that good?
Eh,
If it's good, I'll agree.
yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good. So on Instagram, this is how it ties in. Lee's been very active on Instagram lately. Fantastic 1 minute reels talking about all aspects of leadership management, customer service. We've gotten great responses, Lee, and that's where this comes from. A recent video on Instagram caught my attention because Lee talks about finding managers with the courage to enforce rules. I'd love to hear you and Lee talk more about this. I've I find it easy to find nice managers. It's easy to train be nice. It's difficult to train and enforce be tough when they should be, and to consistently do what needs to be done when it needs to be done in the way it should be done. So, Lee, that's it. Now, I have heard you say at Disney, one of the reasons everyone seems so nice is because you hire nice people. So, how do you balance hire nice people with what this listener is asking about, being tough when you need to be tough?
Well, it's kind of like your mother's nice. She's tough. I mean, this is not about being mean. I think we get those two mixed up, mean or intimidating or disrespectful. This is about your responsibility you've been given a responsibility if you're a manager or a leader or a parent. And if you're given that responsibility, that includes, life's not perfect every day. There's things you got to do and follow up on. And hopefully, I was the leader who had more experience than anybody. I'd been at Hilton, I'd been at Marriott, I'd been in France, I'd been at Disney. I've been married for 50 years. I got a lot of experience. And I want to pass that experience on to people because somebody said the other day, the only thing good about getting old is wisdom. That's all you get. You get more wisdom. You can't do anything else. But I think this is where people have got to land is you're irresponsible if you don't enforce your own policies, procedures, operating guidelines, values, principles, ethics, honesty. I mean, really, that's not being hard or mean. That's being, I guess that we would call that then you're good at developing people, which should be you should get a gold star for that. And I think that's what people remember. And we all know, and you and I've talked about it a million times. People don't like to do the hard things. Whatever, whether it's exercise or whether it's having a difficult conversation with somebody or anything that makes you emotionally uncomfortable. And then there's other people who are emotionally comfortable, but they are kind of become too hard. And somebody told me once, and I read, I think it was Peter Drucker's book. He said, "Oh, when you lead, be tough, not hard." And I said, and it described the difference between the two. It said glass, a pane of glass, that's hard. You mistreated it, breaks into, but a horse saddle is tough. Just last, it can go with it, it can handle it. And I think that's true. If you're tough, people believe that you're actually doing it for the right reasons, and that it's around excellence and it's around them getting better and teaching. Then I think you're on safe ground, that you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be training people, you're supposed to be developing. In fact, you're supposed to be doing that because you're not supposed to be doing their job. They're supposed to be doing it. And if you're in a company or an organization, or if you're a mother, I'm sure there's a list of rules. I'm sure you had them with your family, rules. And if you don't enforce a rule, or you don't enforce something you've taught people, or your values, or even empathy and honesty, and your strong values, people will just disregard it. They're just like, oh, he's not serious. Because people, we're all that way. If we don't get too much pressure, we kind of, okay, I don't need to worry about that. And it's just, I always go back to that responsibility, that people get better when they work around you or work with you. And that once you're 21, you're a lot better than when you were born, because your mother's taught you. She taught you to read. She taught you to do your homework. She taught you to all these things. And sometimes you didn't want to do it. And she didn't care if you wanted to do it or not. She was teaching you, and you described her as hard. That doesn't mean she was hard. She was tough, and she loved you. What's that? I don't know. Is that where that tough love thing comes from? I'm doing it for you, not for me. And there's a satisfaction about, over time, people coming back to you and saying thank you, because they learned to do the same. They learned that quality matters, standards matters, policies matter, procedures matter, consistency matters, because that's how you establish a brand. A brand has all of those things. And I don't know what the brand would be if we just said, everybody do whatever you want. I mean, that would there's no way. So yeah, some managers might think that I was maybe too hard, but they get over it, because you learn. And me, I mean, I had tough managers in my life, man, and they knew a lot and I didn't know much. And of course, my ego and my probably wanted to act like I knew everything, and they straightened me right out. And it's like Mr. Marriott today. He told me, "Look, Cockerell, why don't you get a haircut and look like you're the manager?" I don't know how many people would have said that, but it didn't bother him. I mean, if it's not right, it's not right. If you're in charge of it being right, then you got to make it right, and or your boss will be replacing you. And matter of fact, it's a cancer in an organization when the leadership is not living up to the standards and to the rules, regulations, policies, procedures, operating guidelines. There's safety issues. There's quality issues. There's customers that are not happy because it wasn't like this the last time they came, or everybody's nice until they come and there's somebody's not nice. And it's kind of the lay of the land if you want to be in charge and you want to have responsibility for creating high quality in children or in a job.
I like what Lee told us when I first brought this up. He's like, "Well, look at your mother. She was nice, right? But also tough." And what a great example, because you could ask my kids, they know their mother's a sweetheart, but if they step outside expectations, they would hear about it. So, what a great example. And in the upcoming 30th volume of the Main Street Leader, I know you have an article about what is it? Constructive discontent, about a situation where you weren't happy with something and you had your leadership team in the office and you all talked it out and it got heated. But you said it was one of your best moments as a leader because the real stuff came out and you were able to actually deal with the problem.
Yeah, and I think as a leader, I've learned that if you'll involve people and kind of be a part of the conversation instead of the commander in chief that's sitting up there making everybody listen to you, you'll come up with the right answers. And difficult conversations are emotional because people have stuff up in their brain that triggers. Man, we want to be right. We don't want to be criticized. We think our idea was better. So conversation usually boils it all down to everybody getting on the same page eventually, because we take the time to listen to each other. And all of a sudden, I didn't understand the point of view you were making at first, but now I do as we got more into the conversation. And conversations take time. You got you got to go back and forth and listen and ask questions. And why do you think that? And what? And it's just the goal of all of us should be to walk out of the room that we fixed something, not that somebody won. Who wins is the customer and the company, and that's how I think about it. If you think you're have to win each time, you're not going to be that kind of boss anybody wants to work with, because we wish we could all be right all the time, but we're not. Priscilla told me that. So so anyway, yeah, it's a great subject. It's probably as I've told you many times, I think it's one of the most difficult things for people to do hard things. And I think it's the one thing that takes their career down if they don't do it, because you're not going to get results unless you have high standards and you enforce it. Not to, Mr. Marriott told me that time, Lee, the only way you get excellence is education / training and enforcement. That's it. And it's not to be mean, it's to be high quality, and to standards are standards. And we've often said, let the pilot take the plane off properly, not just however he feels like today. Because if he's in a bad mood and he decides, I don't think I'll put the flaps up, well, that's a problem. I don't want anybody flying a plane emotionally. I want them flying by procedures and operating guidelines and understanding and rules and regulations and the best way to do it. And as we all get better over time, as I had got experience and as you've had experience, you know more. And when you know more, you need to be sharing that. So other people, we say if you first you do it and you learn it, you do it, and then you teach it. This is the name of the game. That's how the whole world unfolds. Is we all learn from somebody, something every day.
Yeah, well, one of the things I have learned in the last few years is that you really should look back at what you did last year, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and say, man, I could have done better than that, because you're so much better now. I am better now than I was a year ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And sure, we can look back and say, gosh, that thing we did 3 years ago wasn't very good, but we still did it. That matters. And we're better now than we were 3 years ago. We shouldn't look back and say, I wish we were as good now as we were 3 years ago, because we were really on fire then.
Well, and you got better through experience and exposure. Uh, I mean, you did. If you look back, you probably make some decisions differently when you dealt with certain things in your past. But that's what time does. You either get it in college, you get it on the internet, you listen to podcasts, or you get experience, or you get exposure, and all of a sudden you know more. When you know more, you ought to use that, and not just let people do whatever they want. And so it's always hard, and you're always going to have detractors. They're not going to be happy. They're going to be talking about you behind your back. Oh, that guy's a jerk, and he's he. But over time, if you people get to know you and they know you're doing it for the right reasons, in fact, they don't have to agree with it. It's that's the problem. They don't know maybe, and you do. And if you do, and if they can convince you, I always tell people, you convince me, I'll be happy to change my mind. I don't want to do anything wrong here. I just want to do the right thing. And the right thing is often hard.
I was talking to someone recently and they were mentioning a situation with their supervisor, and it didn't make sense. And, that I don't know if this is the right thing to do. And what Lee was just telling us, that often people above you know things you don't know that maybe you can't know. And that's the thing. You just have to trust that there are times when there are tough decisions coming down or whatnot, that people above you often know things you don't and perhaps can't know. And Lee, I want to turn this back to the before we wrap up, the original question is that it's easy to find nice managers, easy to train nice, but how do you train your managers to enforce and be a little more tough and be more consistent about enforcing?
Yeah, I think it's like anything. You got to just talk about it all the time, and you've got to, when you hire them, to talk about it. We run our company today with certain procedures, operating guidelines, rules. You're expected to enforce those. Here's two or three that we have more problems with than others. Pay particular attention to those. Here's ones we have when we first hire somebody. Here's a problem we have when something else is going on in the company. But helping people pay attention to what's important, and the things they need to be paying attention to are things that affect themselves, their cast members, the guests, and the profit, the bottom line. And it's just easy to have a really nice day and not have any conflict, and you don't even have to have conflict. By the way, once people get used to talking about their times, he's just going to tell you how it is. Then it's expected. It's just expected, and it's no big deal, and you don't emotionally overreact. But if you work for a person like that, you'll be better long term. You'll be better. You'll be able to handle the hard, difficult things in your life, whether they're not only business, but the personal things you are going to face for sure. And so that's kind of part of the game of growing up and moving forward and getting more mature and learning. And it's more when you work for a company like Disney or Costco or high quality brands. They are high quality brands because they have high expectations, and the leadership is the one to set those expectations, and the leadership is the one to make sure they are carried out. I mean, that's just kind of the payoff is everybody wins.
Well, if you have enjoyed this conversation, the way you can take part in conversations like this with Lee is in the Cockerell Academy. Every month, we have Cockerell Academy community calls. We let people know in advance what the topic is going to be. And then you can show up. And if the topic is being a tougher leader, which we've not done that one, but if that were the topic, then you can come and ask questions or have a lively discussion about that. You can go to cockerellacademy.com to sign up, and then you can join us for all the future Cockerell Academy community calls. Until next week, go out and create magic for others.